What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bet on Sports. As you can tell by the background, it is an NHL playoff prediction preview episode. Sorry, I did not make the amount of NHL content I promised to. I do love the NHL, but I had to go on that hiatus for some um, things that were happening in my life. So I didn't make the amount of NHL content that I wanted to. But I am here now for the playoffs, and I am going to do the same thing I normally do, especially with um, most North American sports. I'm going to break down some end of season stuff, look at the playoffs, and predict the bracket that will, without fail, end up being terrible when I look back on it. So let's sit back and enjoy the ride. I just want to do some news items real quick. Lottery number one pick odds. You can see, remember, the NHL last couple of years has been on a new system. You can only jump up a maximum of 10 picks, meaning 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, all of which are Eastern Conference teams, cannot move up. Yes, the Blues hold the right to the 15 pick due to a trade with the Red Wings. So I guess technically it's not all Eastern Conference teams, but the 12 through 16 finishing is all Eastern Conference team, meaning that shows just how bad the Western Conference was this year in a variety of ways, in my opinion. But the Canucks with a 25.5% chance of landing that one pick and what will most likely be Gavin McKenna. Blackhawks at 13.5%, Rangers at 11, Flame and a half, Flames at 9.5, Maple Leafs at 8.5, Kraken at 7.5, Jets at 6.5, Panthers at 6, Sharks at 5, Predators at 3.5, Blues at 3, everybody else at 0. But the rest of those non-playoff teams, Devils was 0, Islanders was 0, Blue Jackets was 0, Blues via Red Wings was 0, and Capitals was 0. A lot of good Eastern Conference teams that just missed the cut. You can move up, like I said, a maximum of 10 picks. So this is not technically what lottery odds are, but these are the lottery odds for the number one pick. And that's what everybody cares about. Am I right? So definitely more likely than not that number one pick ends up going to a Western Conference team, at least in my opinion. Some other news items I want to talk about. Multiple teams in the East didn't make the playoffs, but they had more points than the Pacific Division leader. You're going to see how the playoffs ended up, like the regular season standings, in just a short amount of time. But teams like the Capitals and the Red Wings and the Blue Jackets had more points or the same amount of points as the Knights and a lot of the Pacific Division teams. Really, in my mind, the West had three teams that looked like contenders, and the rest I don't know about. But the Eastern Conference race was much crazier and much closer than the Western Conference race was. And but too bad, so sad. That's the deal when the season starts for Eastern Conference teams. You don't get to magically go to the West. They don't take the top 16 teams. Everybody knows that. It just so happens to be right now that the East is deeper. The West has a really, really good top. In fact, I would say the West's best of the best is better than the East's best of the best. But the East is just so deep. And I mean, even coming into the season, the Rangers and Maple Leafs and the Panthers, the Eastern Conference teams that have the three highest odds, we're all expected to be, if not in the playoffs, at least in playoff contention. But the Eastern Conference has been absolutely ridiculous, and this year was a perfect example of that. Speaking of that, does there need to be playoff format changes? I've seen a lot of discussion about it. A lot of discussions about should overtime and shootout wins be counted less than regulation wins? Should it be a 3-2-1-0 format? Should they rearrange? Should it just be top 8 in each conference and not the current setup? All kinds of conversations. Although I would like to add, the top 8 usually make it in because maybe the seeding would be different, and that's probably a good argument. Why is a 1 seed in a conference playing somebody that's has the 5th or 6th best record, right? Like maybe that's a fair conversation to have as well. But usually, the top 3 in each division in a conference are usually all going to find themselves in the top 8, and then the wild card will help fill it in. But again, the thing I really wanted to talk about was not necessarily the seeding element and everything. I think the seeding element is fine. There's no perfect seeding element. Like if you're going to have divisions, divisions have to matter. In my opinion, it's weird to have divisions, but that not have them matter. Um, Maybe the current system isn't perfect, but I have an issue with the points. Listen, here's what I'm going to say. I think two things can be true, guys. Okay, so don't come at me mad if you are a team that's going to get butt hurt from what I'm about to say. Everybody knows what the situation is at the beginning of the year. We're on the point system. We've been on this point system for years and years, right? For a good amount of time. You know what the point system is at the beginning of the year, and therefore you know what you have to do to make it. So there is no excuses. Everybody has the same point system. If you want to make the playoffs, win games like at the end of the day or make overtime a whole bunch. I don't care. But everybody has to start with the same point system. So saying that's the reason why you didn't make the playoffs, not true. Everybody has the same opportunity to get the same amount of points, right? Everybody knows that coming into the season. So don't start using the point system as an excuse. Now, what I am going to do is agree that I think this point system maybe has too many warts. Okay. The teams that made the playoffs are the teams that made the playoffs, and they deserve to be there because they're the ones that scored the most points in the point system. But the point system is stupid. I am sorry. Maybe this is a hot take for some of you out there. 3-on-3 hockey is already pushing it to me because it's not real hockey in a sense. But I also understand, even if overtime is sudden death, I understand that hockey is a physical sport and that happens to go into overtime a lot, and we don't want teams playing 3-4 overtimes because they can't score 5-on-5 like it's the playoffs. I agree. I think that makes sense, and I think the shootout makes sense because we don't need to play that much overtime if we don't get the goal. I'm with you there, right? My issue is I do not think winning in a shootout or just making it to overtime and losing a boatload of overtime games should be equivalent or half as equivalent as winning a regulation game. You play to win the game, and in hockey, we're under this point system with there's teams. Who was it? The Capitals finished seventh in regulation wins and aren't in the playoffs. I think a team that's able to be a top 8 team in regulation wins, winning the game, when you're supposed to win it, should be able to make the playoffs. And it's not just the Capitals. There's other good examples. And you look at somebody like the Vegas Golden Knights, not didn't win a whole bunch of games to win their division, but they sure were able to get to overtime and lose a lot. The Philadelphia Flyers, 10 shootout wins. The shootout is a skills competition. Why should winning a skills competition be the same as a regular time beatdown? It shouldn't be. I am personally, the way I lean to it, out of all the discussion debate I've seen, the way that I lean, because I haven't seen any better suggestions, is going back to a 3 points for regulation win, 2 points for overtime, 1 point for an overtime loss, and 0 points for a loss. I'm a fan of the 3-2-1-0 system because teams that win in regulation, I think, should be rewarded more than a team that wins in the shootout, specifically the overtime. If it's going to stay 3-on-3, yes. If it was a more traditional overtime, even if the time was shortened, I think I could be persuaded off of that. But I think the way in which you win needs to be valued. And I think that, for lack of a better term, I was going to say overtime losing needs to be nerfed. It needs to be weakened, right? It doesn't sit right with me that you can lose the game and still get half as many points as a team that won. So I think we need to go to a 3-2-1-0 point system. That would be the main playoff format that I would change. And that's not really a formatting thing. That's a how you get regular season points to put yourself in the playoffs. I don't think you should be able to make it in with a whole because you went to overtime and lost a whole bunch. I don't think you should be able to make it in because you can win a shootout, but you can't win in regulation. Just that type of stuff. You're seeing a lot of conversation about that, especially in the Eastern Conference where there's a lot of butthurt fans. I understand it, but you don't necessarily deserve to go because you won more regulation games. Everybody knows what the format was coming in. The format can be stupid, but get more points is my answer. Okay, Didn't mean to dwell on that point that long. Let me know in the comments below if you think the NHL has a um, playoff format issue or a points format issue. Do we still like the new lottery system? Like most other places where the lottery is, this lottery's been here for what? This is going to be the fifth year. But most other lottery systems, hockey is a unique sport, as kind of what I was just talking about. But most other lottery systems, everybody has a chance to win the one pick. Do we want to see that come back to hockey? Do we like the odds where they're at? Should they be readjusted? Does the lottery in its current state discourage tanking enough? All of these are questions that I've been thinking about, and I'm not sure. The problem is with the lottery, there is no perfect system, and there's always going to be teams that want to tank, right? So I don't know. Half the league makes the playoffs though, so like you can make the playoffs, but then I don't know. It's a whole thing. I just want to hear people's thoughts on the lottery system, to be honest. It's not really new anymore at this point. It's 5 years old. I like elements of it. I actually do kind of like the element that the NHL implemented where you can only move up a certain amount of spots. Usually I'm a traditionalist from like, oh, it's a lottery. Anybody should be able to get any position. But usually those teams that are finishing near the top are finishing near the top for a reason, and they need to get high end talent so they can be competitive. But I also think teams need to be punished if they're constantly at the bottom. If you're constantly getting top 3 picks for year after year after year after year after year at the Chicago Blackhawks, I feel like there should be punishment. We shouldn't encourage teams to do that. We should encourage them to want to get good because it doesn't benefit them to lose so many years in a row. Maybe you can use free agency money. Who knows? Good organizations are going to be good organizations, and I'll leave it at that. If you don't understand what I'm meaning, I'm saying there's some organizations that find ways to never have to bottom all the way out over the course of decades or only do it once, and there's some organizations that are very frequently down there. And there's always good players that aren't in the top 10 in the draft. They just happen to be most frequently there. And I'll leave it at that. Let me know how you feel about the new lottery system as well. And then another thing I wanted to point out, since I slacked on my episodes this year, the Olympics, almost no failures. There was I would say, in terms of like the actual play and how it affected the NHL, there was a couple injuries that were unfortunate. But I think it's impossible to take that out. But I still think it was a huge success for getting eyes on the sport of hockey, getting eyes on the NHL players playing in the Olympics that are the big stars. And I think that was a really good thing. And overall, I think it was a win for the league and win for the sport of hockey overall. I know there's probably a couple teams or a couple players who were like, it's stupid. We just shouldn't send our players in the middle of the season. I get that. But I think it is unquestionably a good for hockey. And it seems like the season, having to change the season around the way we did, it seems like it worked out. I don't think there's anything obvious that happened because, we had a longer break, meaning we had to start the season, end the season, or start the season differently and have more back-to-backs, I think. Or I know that they started the season a little bit early, but it changed the schedule a little bit, and it seemed like it went off pretty well. So I would encourage the NHL and the Players Union to continue to figure out ways to get to the Olympics for 2030 and beyond. All right, enough of this stuff. I'm supposed to be talking about the playoffs, so let's get into these final standings. The Hurricanes, the number 1 overall seed in the East, winning the Metro Division by 15 points. They had 113. Second place Pittsburgh at 98. Tied with the Flyers at 98. Penguins have the tie break, so they get the 2 seed and will host against the Flyers. Flyers barely edging out a large group of Metro Division teams led by the Capitals and Blue Jackets for that 3rd spot in the Eastern Conference, robbing us of a Ovechkin-Crosby series, but also granting us a Battle of Pennsylvania series, so still plenty to be interested in. In the Atlantic Division, the Sabres, Lightning, and Canadiens, it came down to the last couple of games. It was close the whole way. And the Sabres, maybe the biggest surprise of the year, winning the Atlantic Division with 109 points. Lightning and Canadiens tied at 106, and the Lightning own the tiebreaker, so they will host or have home ice for the first round against the Canadiens. In the wild card, the Bruins are in the wild card with 100 points. That's a large point number to be a wild card. But they are the 7 seed going to play the winner of their own division, the Sabres. And then the Senators at 99 in the wild card going to play the Hurricanes. In the Western Conference, the Avalanche are not just the number one overall seed in the Western Conference, but in the entire NHL, winning the President's Trophy by 8 points. Dallas Stars with 112, two of the three best teams from a point perspective in the same division. The Central Division, I think, has a very fair argument about changing the way playoff seeding works, especially the last couple of years. The Minnesota Wild finished third in that division with 104 points. All three of those teams would have easily won the Pacific Division. Golden Knights win this Pacific Division at 95 points. That is an embarrassingly low total. Like I said, the entire Eastern Conference playoff field scored more points than the Pacific Division winner, and half of the Eastern Conference teams that didn't make the playoffs would have been first or second in the Pacific Division. So the Pacific Division really lagging behind the rest of the NHL this year, and the Oilers will probably still find a way to be super competitive in the playoffs. But the Golden Knights at 95, the Oilers at 93, well, they will be hosting the Ducks at 92. And then in the wild card, the Mammoth out in Salt Lake City, making it with 92 points, in the Kings at 90 points. So when you put that bracket together, and guys, I'm about to spoil it because you're going to see the bracket, and as part of the bracket, I've given you my champion. I've showed you how I think the bracket's going to go. So don't turn off the episode. Don't jump to conclusions. Just hear me out first, okay? But this is what the... Oh, no, I was smart. I put the playoff tiers first. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is the playoff bracket. Before I get into the playoff bracket, I do the same thing I do for the NBA. I break the 16 teams down into contenders, sleepers, and see you next year. See you next year teams I don't think have any chance. At best, they win one round and go home. The sleepers are the teams that maybe aren't a 1 or a 2 seed, but I still think can make a run through the playoffs. And then the contenders are the ones that I think are the most obvious teams on terms of winning the Stanley Cup. My number one contender, the President's Trophy, the Avalanche, they won the President's Trophy, so they probably won't make it very far in the playoffs. They have the President's Trophy curse, but they have a really good team. They have one of the best players in the NHL. The Avalanche, you can't argue with the fact that they are a legit contender. Their division rivals, who feel like they play them every single year in the playoffs, the Dallas Stars, third most points in the NHL. I have the Dallas Stars at 2. Minnesota Wild, that's right, my top 3 contenders all come from the Central. The Wild, I think, are really good. They made a big move to get Quinn Hughes. I've loved their top 2 forward lines. I'll be interested to see their goalkeeping. Minnesota Wild at 3. The Sabres, I went ahead and gave them 4. They have great special teams play, especially on the penalty kill. They've gotten good goaltending this year, and it looks like those young guns have finally figured out how to use their speed and work together. It finally clicked for the Sabres. I think they are a legit contender. The Hurricanes, the same style of hockey. They're going to dominate 5-on-5 shot opportunities, but they're also maybe the best total or the best overall special teams when you take into account the penalty kill and the power play. They're really good at both. That's important in the playoffs. I don't know if I love this Hurricane team. I don't know if I think they're better than last year's or not yet. There's some things I don't love about this team, but the Hurricanes are absolutely contenders. And then the Lightning, the dynasty, maybe it kind of ended, but they're still really good. They still have a lot of pieces, and I think they have looked good for most of this season. I would not be shocked to see the Lightning remember how to win a Stanley Cup and go on a run this year. Let's get into the sleepers, and it feels weird, this first team, having them as a sleeper, but they also just haven't been really good this year. The Edmonton Oilers, with the best player in the NHL and Connor McDavid, the best 1-2 punch in McDavid and Draisaitl. Yes, they aren't always on the ice at the same time. They usually aren't unless it's the power play, but that's a heck of a 1-2 punch. Edmonton Oilers. And sometimes they are on the ice at the same time. I don't want to be completely wrong, but you get what I'm saying. Probably the best top 2 players in the entire NHL. Question with the Oilers is the same as it always is. can they prevent goals consistently between their defense and goaltending? You know they're going to score a lot of goals. Their penalty kills bad. Goaltending, who knows? But the Oilers didn't play well through portions of the season. They only had 93 points. So in a way, they are a sleeper, and in a way, they shouldn't be allowed to qualify for the category. And I understand both sides of the argument. The Penguins, very high scoring team. Usually playoff scoring goes down a little bit. They are pretty good on the special teams, particularly in the power play. That's part of the reason why their offense is so high powered. Anthony Mantha having a, maybe one of the not as popular names on the Penguins that you think of when you think of this era of Pittsburgh hockey, but Mantha having an absolutely resurgent season there. I think the Penguins are a sleeper team, especially coming out of one of the weaker quadrants. The two weakest quadrants in this bracket, I think, are the Pacific and the Metro. And part of the reason why I think the Metro is weak is because the Hurricanes, we know what they do in the playoffs, no matter how good they are in the regular season. But the Penguins, I would not be shocked to see go on a run. The Canadiens, I have them as sleepers. They have a lot of strength. I get a little bit worried about their defensive depth, or their D-core depth. I do think they're good enough where if they're hot, if they can get going early in the playoffs, I think they can go on a run. So much skill and speed, so much youth. Is it too much youth or they're not going to be experienced for a run? That's, I think, a legitimate potential. Golden Knights played everybody close. One of the best third period, maybe the best third period team in hockey. Still have a recent title. They have the star players needed. They just don't seem to me they've coalesced at all times this year. But I think the Golden Knights know how to win in the playoffs, and I wouldn't be shocked, especially coming out of the Pacific side of the bracket, to see them go on a run. And then the 5 teams that I'm just going to say see you next year to: the Senators, the Flyers, the Ducks, the Kings, and the Mammoth. Kings and the Mammoth are interesting teams. Kings are kind of phasing out. Mammoth trying to find a way on the fly, I think, to build a contender, some good youth. Senators, Flyers, and Ducks are fun teams, but they're too young. They're not quite ready to be true contenders to me yet, but they have bright futures. All right, my theoretical playoff bracket. I'm trying to keep this episode under 30 minutes, so I'm going to try and go quickly. Hurricanes and Senators. I think the Senators maybe win one game, but the Hurricanes are going to be able to enforce their style of play. I think their special teams will help them, and the Hurricanes should win this 1-8 match pretty easily. The Penguins and the Flyers. I think it's going to be fun. I think the Flyers will push the Penguins to 6 games, but I think the Penguins' experience, Crosby's desire to try and make another playoff run, especially not being in them the last couple years, and their power play prowess will get the Penguins past the Flyers. And remember, the Flyers won a lot of games in overtime and a lot of games in the shootout. You don't have those same advantages in the playoffs. Give me the Penguins to win in 6. I'm going to go to the bottom first. The Lightning and the Canadiens. I think the Lightning are trying to soak or squeeze every last ounce they have out of some of their older core guys. Yes, they have some youth as well, but I think the Lightning are still in very much a win now mode. I guess all of these teams are in a sense, but I really think the Lightning are squeezing every last drop they can. I think they know this is one of their last chances to get that elusive third cup of the decade. And I think the Lightning are going to just be more experienced and seasoned than the Canadiens. Canadiens have a phenomenal year, but it's just a tough playoff matchup against another really good experienced team that doesn't have too many weaknesses. Canadiens and Lightning, I think, go 6 or 7 games. Canadiens got good playoff experience last year, but I think the Lightning are going to get by them. But man, I don't love picking them. The Eastern Conference is crazy, guys. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if every single pick I have is wrong. I generally think every team has a legitimate chance to beat all of the other 7 teams in the Eastern Conference. And I'm going to pick the Lightning to barely escape that. But the fact that Canadiens got some good playoff experience against the President Trophy winners last year makes me think they're going to be ready for this moment, and I could be looking like an idiot. The Bruins and the Sabres, Buffalo fans, really hockey fans in general, most people are, I think are going to want Boston to lose. They're one of the most spoiled sports cities in the country. The Sabres have been thirsting for this. The city of Buffalo wants a deep playoff run. And I'm sorry, but I'm picking the Bruins. The Sabres have been a great story this year, but most of that core has no playoff seasoning, no playoff experience, not a lot of it. I think the Bruins are good enough to beat the Sabres team. These teams were only separated by 9 points in the regular season. This Bruins team has a good defense. They have good special teams numbers. I trust their goaltending. The Sabres are going to take some games from them. Like, this has 6-7 games. I'm actually going to say 6 games. I'm going to be bold and say the Bruins beat the Sabres in 6 games. I think the Bruins in the playoff hockey are going to be able to be physical and slow down the Sabres offense. And I think the Bruins, with their experience, with their knowledge, get by, and the Sabres get upset in the first round, come back next year ready to roll after gaining valuable experience. Then I have the Hurricanes beating the Penguins. I just don't think the Penguins quite have enough to hang with the Hurricanes. Then I have the Lightning beating the Bruins. Bruins can't use physicality and experience over the Lightning. Lightning get by the Bruins. Bruins and Hurricanes. Well, the Hurricanes are going to hurricane. I'll give them 1 game, which is more than they normally get in the Eastern Conference Finals. Lightning beat the Hurricane in 5, going and move on to the Stanley Cup. Avalanche Kings, not much to talk about there. Give me the Avalanche. The Wild are such a good team. It feels disrespectful to have them play the Stars in the first round. That they're the 3rd best team in the Western Conference, but the Stars are going to overpower them. It's going to be a little bit too much. Stars are going to win this one in 6 games. Sorry if I'm speeding up. I'm trying to get this done and keep it inside 30 minutes for you guys. I try and keep these episodes shorter than they used to be. Okay, and then in the weakest quadrant of the bracket, the Golden Knights and the Mammoth. The Mammoth, I feel like they made the playoffs because they were in the Western Conference. They're not a bad team. They don't have enough dogs. They don't have enough pieces. Vegas Golden Knights roll over them. Oilers and Ducks. Ducks, fun, frisky, young team. They're going to be really, really good in 2 or 3 years. They can't run with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the playoffs. Those two alone, McJesus is going to show up if he has to. The Oilers, I think, are going to be able to easily handle the Ducks. I think it's going to be probably the highest scoring round of the first, or the highest scoring series of the first round. But I think the Oilers are going to get by, or they'll play the Golden Knights, a team they're very familiar with. And I just think McDavid is so desperate for that first title. He's not going to let them lose to the Knights. These teams are only separated by 2 points in the regular season. Yes, both teams have some star power, but I think the Oilers are going to find a way to outscore the Golden Knights, move on in 6 games. And then back at the top of the bracket, the Stars have kicked the Avalanche out of the playoffs the last 2 years, and it's been fun, exciting 7-game series. I think it's another 7-game series. But I think the Stars beat the Avalanche again, and the President's Trophy catches up with the Avalanche. Give me the Stars. And then in a rematch of so many recent Western Conference Finals, the Stars versus the Oilers, I think the Stars finally figure out a way. The Oilers just don't seem as strong this year. I don't know if McJesus can save them against the Stars. It'll be a good battle. Stars in 6. And then in the Lightning and the Stars have been selling off so much to try and win a title, and I think they finally get there. Guys, I know I said at the beginning of the year not to fall for the Dallas Stars. I do it every single year. I didn't do it at the beginning of this year, but I'm doing it now. The Stars over the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay versus Dallas. 2 typical hockey cities, as everybody knows. Give me the Stars to win the cup over the Lightning in a thrilling 6-game series. That's all I have for you guys today. It's going to be a great sports weekend. So much going on. So make sure you find a couch and watch some sports. Let me know in the comments below who you think is going to win the NHL title. Take care of yourself. Take care of your families. Like, comment, and subscribe. Crazy world out there. Peace out.